What is going on, everybody? In this video, I'm going to be going through my updated 12-team playoff bracket heading into week 5. I'm going to start off with going through the 12 teams that I actually have making the college football playoff, and then I will go through the bracket and predict every single matchup and predict who wins the 2025 national championship. And let's start off with going through my 1 through 12 seed, and at number 1, I do have the Georgia Bulldogs. And I know they still have 3 brutal road games against Alabama, Texas, and Ole Miss, and they play Tennessee at home. They have a very tough schedule. But I trust this Georgia team to go 11-1, and that resume should do them enough to get them the 1 seed. This should be a very good Georgia team. I know they had that bad game against Kentucky, but I can trust this defense, and I can trust Carson Beck, and I can trust Kirby Smart as a head coach. I like this Georgia team, and I do have them as my 1 seed. And as my 2 seed and the Big Ten Championship winner, I have Ohio State. They have a pretty easy path to the Big Ten Championship. They have an easy schedule. Their toughest game is on the road against Oregon, and even if they lose that game, I still see them making the Big Ten Championship, and they could very well win the Big Ten, and I do have them winning the Big Ten. Their defense should be one of the top in the country, maybe the best in the country. They have some offensive talent too. Chip Kelly is running that offense. I really like this Ohio State team, so I have them as my 2 seed. As my 3 seed, I have the Miami Hurricanes. At the start of the season, I had Florida State, but I quickly swapped Miami to be my 3 seed. This obviously looks like the best team in the ACC. I really can't trust anybody over Miami in the ACC. The offense has been rolling with Cam Ward, and they're very good up front defensively. Give me Miami to win the ACC and lock down the 3 seed. And here's where things get interesting. I have finally bought into the hype with this Utah team. I have Utah as the Big 12 championship winner and my 4 seed. And before I had Kansas State in the spot, but Kansas State just got absolutely embarrassed by BYU, and Utah just beat a top 20 Oklahoma State team with a backup quarterback. I think I could trust this Utah team the most. I am keeping an eye on teams like UCF and Iowa State. They have impressed me. I could really trust Utah the most. They have a great head coach. They have the quarterback. They have the defense. Give me Utah as my 4 seed. And as my 5 seed, I have Texas. I think they are one of the best teams in the country. I don't think they'll win the SEC, but I think they are going to get an at-large bid in this playoff. Honestly, if you're just asking me off of eye test, Texas looks like the best team in college football right now. I do think they will lose to Georgia because they have Oklahoma and Georgia back-to-back, and that could leave them out of the SEC championship game. I had Texas just missing out on the SEC championship game, but I have them as the 5 seed going 11-1 and missing out on the SEC championship game. And as my 6 seed, this is a little bit confusing. I have Ole Miss as my 6 seed. I do have Ole Miss making the SEC championship game, but I have them losing in the SEC title game, so I have them with 2 losses, ending up behind Texas. I just think Texas is going to have a better resume. And despite not having Texas in the SEC championship game, I have them going 11-1. And I do think a 2-loss SEC runner-up could end up behind a 1-loss SEC team. The SEC is going to be a gauntlet. I think there's going to be a lot of 10 and 11 win teams this year in the SEC, so it is a little bit confusing. But regardless, I do have Ole Miss as my 6th seed. They look like one of the top teams in the country. They have been dominating their opponents. Jackson Dart leads the country in passing yards. And if that defensive front can take a step forward, this is going to be a very dangerous team. And as my 7th seed, I still have the Oregon Ducks. I still think Oregon is going to be legit and continue to get better. They played a pretty good game against Oregon State, and they are coming off a bye week. Every single year Dan Lanning has been the coach of the Oregon Ducks, this team has gotten better throughout the season, and I expect the same this season. And they have the quarterback to make the college football playoff. So give me Oregon as my 7th seed. And as my 8th seed, I have another SEC team. I have the Tennessee Volunteers. I absolutely think Tennessee is a national title contender. Like I have said before, the SEC is completely stacked, and there's so many contenders in the SEC, and I cannot leave a team like Tennessee out of the college football playoff. Their defense looks very good, and this looks like the most complete team Josh Heupel has had yet, and they have the quarterback in Nico Iamaleava this season. It starts at the quarterback position, but Tennessee has more than a quarterback. They have great trench play. So I do have Tennessee as my 8th seed. And as my 9 seed, I have Penn State. I really don't see a way Penn State doesn't make the college football playoff because they have an easy path to the playoffs because of the easy schedule. Their toughest game is on the road against Ohio State. Even if they lose 2 games, I still see this team making the college football playoff. The defense is just way too good and consistent, and the offense has showed some promise with the new offensive coordinator from Kansas. We'll see if they can be more explosive this year, but I have liked what I have seen from Penn State so far, so I have them as my 9 seed. As my 10 seed, I have Alabama, which would make them the 5th SEC team making the college football playoff. I just think this is the way it is going to end up, and who knows, maybe 6 SEC teams could get in. I'm not even joking. The SEC is so stacked this season. But I have no reason to believe this Alabama team isn't making the college football playoff. I know they have a tough schedule, but that was an impressive win on the road against Wisconsin. Jalen Milroe and that offense is really starting to click, and the defense has also looked pretty tough up front. The offensive line has been somewhat of a question mark, but they cleaned some things up against Wisconsin, and they had some guys injured earlier. I expect Alabama to continue to get better, and they should be one of the best teams in the country, so I have Alabama as a 10 seed. And as my 11 seed, I now have Louisville. Last week I had USC, but I don't know if they're quite ready to make that jump and make the college football playoff. They still have some tough teams left on the schedule like a Penn State. And I don't know if USC has the offensive line to be a double-digit win team this season. I like USC. I think they could win 8 or 9 games, but I'm really not sure about them yet. So I do not have them making the college football playoff anymore. Michigan's defensive line really destroyed USC's offensive line in that matchup, and it cost them that game. And USC is going to have to play against some tough defensive fronts this season in the Big Ten. So instead, I have Louisville as my 11th seed. I really debated who I would put as my 11th seed. Maybe I could go with another SEC team. Maybe I could go with Clemson out of the ACC. Maybe I could go with another Big 12 team. I'm really not sure. I was thinking between Louisville and Clemson, but I really like what I have seen from this Louisville team, and I do think they will find a way to beat Clemson. I still have some questions with Clemson because they don't use the transfer portal, and when they play a better defense, their offense might struggle like they did against Georgia. I could totally see this Louisville team making a run this year. They have a good defense with a lot of production back from last season, and they have a quarterback in Tyler Shough who has looked pretty good. Louisville also has a tough test against Notre Dame. Even if they lose that game, I could see them bouncing back and making the college football playoff. But regardless, Louisville is a team to watch out for this week because if they can beat Notre Dame, this is definitely a playoff contender. I'm higher on Louisville than I was before, and I have them as my 11 seed. And as my G5 representative, I do have Boise State as my 12th seed. I could have went with UNLV, but they lost a couple of players. They lost their quarterback and they lost their running back due to NIL problems. I was watching this UNLV team, but even if they did keep those players, I'm still very high on Boise State, and they are my favorite. That offense is going to be very good with Ashton Jeanty, and I still have high expectations for that defense. The defense hasn't looked great this season, but last year they were solid and they should get better defensively, so I do have Boise State as my 12th seed. But let's move on to predicting the bracket for this playoff. Let's start off with the first round games. We have the 5 seed Texas playing the 12 seed Boise State. I like this Boise State team, but this game's going to be later in the season. Texas is going to be rolling with Quinn Ewers. Easily give me Texas over Boise State. The next game is the 6 seed Ole Miss versus the 11 seed Louisville. I gotta take Ole Miss in this game. I don't even know if Louisville will make the playoffs, let alone win a playoff game. Traveling on the road against a very good Ole Miss team with a high-powered offense is going to be tough, and I don't think Louisville can win a game like this on the road. Ole Miss is just a stacked team. They have a lot back from last season, so give me Ole Miss to beat Louisville. The next game is definitely an even matchup. We have 7 seed Oregon versus 10 seed Alabama. I could totally see this game going either way. Kalen DeBoer is 3-0 against Dan Lanning. This time he would be with Alabama playing Oregon instead of with Washington. This would be a very interesting game because Oregon and Alabama have never played in college football history. This is really a 50-50 game for me. But late in the season, I think Oregon is going to have some things figured out. And Autzen Stadium is going to be packed for this game. I think Dan Lanning gets it done and finally beats Kalen DeBoer, making him 1-3 against Kalen DeBoer. And I think Oregon wins a super close game at home against Alabama. And the final first round matchup is the 8 seed Tennessee versus the 9 seed Penn State. I really think this would be an even matchup. But Tennessee has 2 advantages that I think would win them this game. The first thing being that they have a quarterback in Nico Iamaleava who is going to be ready for this stage at home. And the second reason is because they have this game at home and Tennessee does not lose at home a lot. And definitely with a team like this is the best team Tennessee has had in quite a while. And I don't see Tennessee going down in a moment like this, hosting a playoff game against Penn State. I like this Penn State team, but I still have some questions with the offense, and I think Tennessee is just a better all-around team. And I trust them to beat Penn State in a first-round matchup at home. So give me the 8 seed Tennessee over the 9 seed Penn State. And now let's move on to the second round games. We have the 1 seed Georgia versus the 8 seed Tennessee. If there was a game that Georgia could slip up in early in the postseason, it would be against an 8 seed like Tennessee. I'm really high in Tennessee, and there's a lot of good teams in college football, so a pretty good team can get that 8 seed spot. And that makes it possible for an 8 seed to upset a 1 seed right away. Or a 9 seed if the 9 seed ends up beating the 8 seed. But in this case, I have Tennessee making the second round of the playoffs, and I think they can keep this game very close against Georgia. I really think Tennessee is a legit national title contender. This is the most complete team Josh Heupel has had. They have a very dominant run game and a pretty good front seven that is led by James Pierce Jr. But I gotta trust Kirby Smart and the Georgia Bulldogs to have a game plan ready in this game coming off a first round bye, so give me Georgia in a very close game over Tennessee. The next game is 2 seed Ohio State versus 7 seed Oregon. I gotta take Ohio State in this game. I have Oregon beating Ohio State in the regular season because they have that game at home, and that's a huge game for Oregon. But in the postseason, I think Ryan Day has the squad ready to play. This is an extremely stacked Ohio State team with a lot of guys back from last season, definitely defensively. I like Ohio State to beat Oregon in the Big Ten Championship, and I like them to beat them in the playoffs as well. So give me Ohio State in this game. The next game is 3 seed Miami versus 6 seed Ole Miss. Now this game could be interesting. These are two teams that really haven't played anybody yet. I know Miami had that game against Florida, but Florida is not good, let's be real. And both Miami and Ole Miss have looked very good despite playing nobody really. I could see this game going either way. The quarterback play in this game will be phenomenal with Jackson Dart versus Cam Ward. Those two guys are leading the country in passing yards right now. It really comes down to which coach and staff I would trust more, and honestly, I would take Ole Miss in this game. I also think they have some good defensive upside with some of those transfers that they brought in. Like I said, I could see this game going either way, but I am very high on Ole Miss. I have them in my top 4, so give me Ole Miss to beat Miami in a huge playoff win. And the last quarterfinal matchup is the 4 seed Utah versus the 5 seed Texas. This would be an interesting test for Texas because Utah is always a good team and they are very scrappy. But I think Texas could win a game like this probably by 10 points. Texas just has a big talent advantage over Utah, and there's no saying that Cam Rising will stay healthy for Utah. I trust what Texas has more, and this is a big year for Steve Sarkisian and the Texas Longhorns. Give me Texas to beat Utah by around 10 points. And now we move on to the semifinals. We have 1 seed Georgia playing 5 seed Texas. This could easily be an SEC championship game. This could easily be a national championship game. I do have Georgia beating Texas in the regular season because, like I said, Texas has to play Oklahoma right before they play Georgia. But in the postseason, I think Texas gets their revenge and beats Georgia if these two teams meet. Kirby Smart and the Georgia Bulldogs usually play very well in the postseason, but I think this game could be a coming out party for Steve Sarkisian and the Texas Longhorns. I truly think this is a national title caliber roster, and this is a really good team led by Quinn Ewers at quarterback. You don't just have Quinn Ewers, you have Arch Manning. This team also has great depth. Even with the backup running back, they have had a pretty solid run game. I think this would be a huge statement win for Texas, and I think they do beat Georgia and move on to the national championship. And the last semifinal game is the game between the 2 seed Ohio State and 6 seed Ole Miss. Ole Miss has had a great run up to this point, but I think it ends against a way too stacked Ohio State team. I think Ohio State has the edge over Ole Miss in the trenches in this game. And I think Ohio State's defense can contain that Ole Miss offense, and Ohio State can do enough to win this game. So give me Ohio State to beat Ole Miss and move on to the national championship. So nothing has changed this week with my national title prediction. I still have Texas playing Ohio State, and my prediction to win the 2025 national championship is still the Texas Longhorns. So I have Texas beating Ohio State. It really comes down to quarterback play in this game. I trust Quinn Ewers more. Even if Quinn Ewers doesn't stay healthy, they have Arch Manning. This is a very good Texas offense, and I think this is a situation where the offense can outplay the defense. Defense usually win championships, but elite offenses always find a way to score points. And I don't know if Ohio State has the offense to keep up in a shootout against this Texas team, because I think Texas has a much better defense than last season. So I do still have Texas winning the 2025 national championship. But anyways, that is going to do it for my Week 5 12-team playoff predictions. Let me remind you guys to like the video and also subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications so you never miss an upload. And if you guys love college football, then you'll love this channel. because we upload a ton of college football content and we basically cover everything on this channel, so definitely consider subscribing. And also consider checking out my socials down in the description below. But that is going to do it, guys, and peace out.